Saito is a loudmouth clown who picks fights with the most insufferable girl in his class just to pass time. However, everything changes when they're forced to marry and speedrun making babies in the bedroom. It all starts with Saito walking into his class when he sees Akane, who is both the beauty and the beast. She grabs him by the tie and threatens to end the show in the first episode if he tells anyone about their marriage. 4 days prior, Akane is so far up his ass she could taste what he had for lunch, just because he didn't fill out the class log properly. Saito is annoyed and explains no one in their right mind reads the class log, but her constant nagging makes him realize why women live longer than men. Just then, a blonde named Himori shows up and asks her to let Saito off the hook, displaying her 2 very good points in the process. She asks why she is always picking on the poor guy, and Akane explains that his face is so hideous, it makes her want to flatten it with the back of her slipper. Soon after, his cousin Shisei shows up and asks why they're fighting, and Saito explains Akane is being a Karen for no reason. Himari believes Akane might have feelings for Saito since she's always picking on him, but she claims she would start waving the pride flag if he was the last man on earth. Saito gets back at her, stating he'd listen to Justin Bieber on repeat instead of dating her. On his way home, he gets a call from his gramps Tenryu to invite him over for tea, who wants him to be an heir to his business. Saito isn't really interested in being successful in life, but the gramps sends some men in black and a limo to pick him up, so he doesn't end up as miserable as he looks. On his way to meet him, he recalls how the Hojo business was about to collapse until Tenryu somehow made it work and turned it into a global high-tech corporation. Even at the age of wearing diapers, he's still sharp as a teenager and works as the head of the company. While waiting for the old man, he runs into Akane and learns she came here because her grandma Chio told her to. Without wasting a second, the two of them start arguing until Tenryu arrives in his convertible with Akane's grandma. Despite their initial shock, they head inside where they are served a fancy meal, but Akane keeps chugging in juice because her appetite died as soon as she saw Saito's hideous face. The two start arguing again, and the old farts are happy to see them getting along so well. When Saito asks why they're here, they tell them they're supposed to be married, making their faces look like they found out they're Chio's OnlyFans. Tenryu explains how he and Chio used to be classmates in love, but fought over silly things just like them, which drifted them apart. Tenryu married someone else, but she died 10 years ago, and so did Chio's husband. After living their lives, they can't help but wonder what it would have been like if they stayed together, so they decided to hook up their grandchildren as an experiment. Akane goes on a rant about how marriage is supposed to be between people who love each other, and Saito for once agrees with her and rejects the offer. Tenryu threatens to name the company after a stray dog he found in the slums, but compared to Saito, it's probably the company's best hope.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
On the other hand, Chio whispers something into Akane's ear which terrifies her, and they give the young couple 3 days to make their choice. After they leave, Akane and Saito are confused about what to do, and when Saito asks her what Chio whispered in her ear, Akane refuses to tell him. Heading home, she calls Himura and asks what she would do if she were forced to marry someone, and Himori says she'll take a stand for herself because she already likes someone. Akane is curious to know who she is talking about, but Himura counters her with the same question. Akane claims she's crush-free unless you count the person she wants to turn into a pancake with her boots. Since she has no one she likes, Himura suggests getting married to split bills and get creamy backshots, which sends Akane into a panic. Meanwhile, Saito can't wrap his head around the joke his life has turned into courtesy of the plot gods. He explains the situation to Shizi, who asks if he would rather want a free life or inherit the Hojo company. When he reveals he'd like to have both, she gives him a TED talk on how a person can have everything they want. She explains how he could become homeless without the company, and even then she would support him. However, he will need a lot of money to achieve his goals, and choosing the company might be the best option. Later, Saito discusses his plan with Akane, and after 3 days, they tell their grandparents that they decided to get married. Saito states they'll get to the paperwork and the ceremony after graduation, but Tenryu breaks the news that he's already completed the paperwork and even has a separate house ready for them. They reveal they've already transferred their stuff to their new house and leave them to speedrun making babies, much to their shock. Once inside, Saito locks the door like any sane person, but Akane starts panicking thinking he's planning on doing her at the door. After looking around the house and finding their stuff, they realize there's a double bed in the bedroom and call Tenryu, who tells them to share it since they're married. He further tells them not to sleep on the sofas as it's against the rules, making Saito wonder if he has cameras in the living room. Akane starts to panic thinking she's going to be walking side to side for the next few days and picks up a pencil to defend herself like she's a bunch of John Wick. Later, Sato offers his help in moving her stuff, but she thinks he just wants an excuse to be closer to her. However, Sato saves her from falling down the stairs, explaining how he'd be locked up in jail if she were to die on the first day of their marriage.
FBI, open up!
Later, Sato spots a pre-ordered pizza in the kitchen, and Akane joins him because she's super hungry. He invites her to eat together, but she thinks it's yet another attempt to swipe her V card and runs away with a slice of pizza. At night, Sato gets tired and hits the bed, and Akane hesitantly joins him soon after. Sato's North Pole boils up smelling the shampoo in her hair, but Akane warns her not to think of anything funny if he wants to live through the night. She yaps about how she's never been in a relationship before, but Sato asks her to stop worrying because she's safe. He then asks why she chose to marry him, but Akane refuses to tell him why. She claims it's just a formality and she has to play along because she wants to make her dream come true. The next day in school, Akane sternly tells Sato to keep his mouth shut if he wants to live, and the man says he has no intention of telling anyone. Akane is so embarrassed about it that she would rather tape a live bomb on her chest and make fireworks of his whole school if anyone finds out she's married to this bum. As they enter the class, Himari asks them what they were talking about in the halls, and Akane says she was telling Saito to take his ugly face away from her. As Saito gets seated, she says he smells a new shampoo on him and asks where he stayed last night. Saito nervously tells her his dad bought a new shampoo, but she calls bullshit because she can smell a girl's scent on him as well. She knew something was going on and did her research, so now she knows he's married and is living in a separate house. He takes her outside to stop her from spilling the beans, but she demands hush money because he didn't even ask her before smashing another chick. When he asks her what she wants, she can't think of anything and decides to tell him later. After gym class, Akane once again goes back to bullying him for not leaving the equipment in front of the storage room. Saito starts arguing that he left this stuff there because the next class is going to use the same equipment, but Akane finds other things to bitch about, which starts another argument between them. When the whole class gathers to watch their comedy show, Himari reveals they've been fighting so much that it's gotten famous around here. Later at home, Akane complains about the fridge being filled with juice boxes, and Saito confidently claims it was his idea. When she argues that she needs a balanced diet, the guy shows her a cupboard filled with packs of instant ramen. When it comes to protein, Saito introduces him to the concept of protein shakes, but Akane doesn't want to have to deal with artificial food. This starts another argument between the lovebirds, and Saito freakishly admits he spent years ruining his taste buds, so this awful food tastes good to him. Akane realizes this idiot will kick the bucket at his rate, which will be bad for her goal, so she decides to teach him the value of real cooking. As she cooks for Saito, the guy starts to think she's going to poison the food and finish him off for good. Later, Saito is hesitant to eat because this could very well be his last supper, but once he tastes it, it takes him back to his childhood when he used to have homemade meals. He says it's an average homemade meal like he's always wanted, but Akane thinks he's insulting her and snatches the plate away. Saito snatches it back and quickly eats the whole thing, leaving Akane frustrated. The next day, she wakes him up for school, but Saito thinks he's sleeping with Shisei and pulls her in. Akane then smacks him on the head and takes him downstairs, explaining to him that he will have to do the dishes if she cooks dinner. Saito tells her to use the other ones and that he'll wash them at once when they pile up, which frustrates her. Later, she complains about toilet paper cores and soap wrappers in the bathroom. But Saito thinks trash needs to be thrown out only once a month. Akane is a high-maintenance freak who wants the whole house clean, but Saito is a disgusting hermit who thinks bathing is optional.
What?
As they walk to school, Saito reflects on how they see things differently and wonders if living with Akane is even possible. Later at night, Saito is smacking zombies in game to blow off steam when Akane shows up and asks him to keep the volume down. Once she sees the gory game he's playing, she covers her eyes in disgust and tells him to turn it off. Saito refuses to listen to her, claiming it's one of the most popular zombie games in the world. So Akane tries to snatch the controller, which leads to another argument. Amid their struggle, Akane unplugs the console, making the guy look like someone stole his V-Bucks. Once the rest of his stuff is sent over, he realizes every day is war with this crazy bitch, so he hits the shower to prepare for battle. As he enters the shower, he is shocked to find Akane in the bathtub and immediately leaves. However, he then worries she might have passed out and enters again to check up on her. He realizes she's just asleep, but since people can also drown this way, he decides to wake up her by shouting. When she's about to slip in, Saito quickly pulls her out, causing her to fall on him and wake up in horror. Akane thinks he is trying to get his love stick wet and accuses him of unspeakable things, and things go from bad to worse when she realizes he's even got a hands-on approach on her no packs. While dyeing her hair, she is still thinking about the whole thing and wonders if Saito came into the bathroom to stop her from drowning in the tub. As they get into bed, she sums up the courage to ask him, but Saito turns off the lights before she can finish, causing her to stay up crying all night. The next day, Himari notices that Akane seems down in the dumps and checks up on her, prompting Akane to confide in her. She tells Himari that she wants to fix a relationship with a certain someone but doesn't know how to, so Himari suggests hugging it out. When Akane says that's out of the question, Himari tells her to simply talk it out with this person. Akane thinks it's easier for her since she's an extrovert, but Himari explains she also has her fair share of troubles when it comes to making friends. She advises her to show respect before you demand it, and it clicks something in her empty head. Meanwhile, Saito and Shisei are eating waffles outside, and the guy explains how his house has become a complete dumpster fire. She advises him to get divorced, but Saito says it's too late to run away from this commitment because he wants to take over his company. She then suggests she tries to get along with Akane, but Saito thinks it's impossible because they're so different. Shisei says compatibility is a global issue and people overcome it by coming to mutual terms, which is something he has not even thought of doing. Making it work with all sorts of people is something a CEO does, so he must learn to live with her if he wants to run the company. Saito heads home to make things right with Akane, but his mind says nope when he sees her angry face. As he walks by her, she pulls him back and gently asks if they could talk over their issues. She fears they might end up divorced if this keeps up, so she wants to figure out a way for them to get along. Saito doesn't want his life to be miserable as well, so he suggests they set some ground rules in the house. Akane agrees and points out how she's been doing all the house chores, but the guy says he likes to do dishes and laundry once they pile up because it's efficient. When Akane starts complaining about the germs, he remembers Shisei's advice and agrees to do the dishes every day. She then asks him to state his issue, and Saito says he doesn't want to get smacked every time he brushes against her in bed. Akane is a little hesitant at first, but when he reminds her how their bed is small, she says he has permission for a joy ride, but only with pants on. On top of that, she asks him to play his horror games with headphones on so she doesn't piss her pants, and Saito agrees to it. Saito says he read somewhere that verbal gratitude is essential in building up a good marriage, so Akane nervously asks him to compliment her if he likes her food. Later that night, she calls Himura to let her know that even though they aren't close, at least they have hashed it out. Just then, Saito enters the room and she puts herself on display, asking him to touch her to his heart's content. When Saito says he meant touch by accident, her embarrassment is immeasurable. The next day, he walks home with Shisei and lets her know that they're making slow progress toward building a relationship. He then returns home with Akane's favorite strawberry shortcake, explaining he remembers it from her essay in the first year. Akane is pleased to see how attentive he has been towards her and thanks him with a gentle smile, making the guy blush. She then cooks him an elaborate meal to return the favor, and she is delighted when he compliments her cooking. While he's doing the dishes, Akane asks if he needs help, which makes him think he's in a dream. He's not used to this because she's always acting like a cold bitch, but realizes she's pretty cute when she smiles. Later, Saito is reading a book when Akane suggests he finishes it later because she's rented a movie related to cats and was hoping they could Netflix and chill tonight. Saito agrees to watch the movie with her, and while Akane is gushing over how cute the cats are, Saito is unhinged and eventually falls asleep. Once the movie ends, Saito immediately wakes up pretending he watched the whole thing, so Akane suggests they watch a movie of his liking to show her gratitude. Saito says he would prefer a game over a movie any day and offers to teach her how to play. 30 minutes later, she's beating it in the game he taught her to play, and Saito realizes this is fun. That night, Saito covers Akane up before sleeping, and she thanks him for paying so much attention to her. He then suggests she buy the next game they'll play, and he'll look for a movie they can watch. Seeing how formal he's acting, she asks him to call her by her first name, which makes him flustered. The next day in class, Akane has stopped treating him like he's a smell hermit, and Himari immediately picks up on the fact that their dynamic has changed. When Akane says she's overthinking it, Himari assumes they're trying to get along, which confuses Akane so much that she skedaddles out of the classroom. Later, Saito is in the library looking for a book on how to stop being a pathetic loser when he runs into Shies. She asks if he's learned anything from the book, and Saito says teamwork makes the dream work. He then meets Akane in the hallway, but she strictly tells him to keep his filthy hands off her in school. Saito asks if she has any plans with her friends after school, and when she says no, he suggests they go shopping once they're done with the classes. Akane panics, thinking he's asking her out on a date, but so he quickly drags her into an empty room to make sure no one even gets a whiff of their relationship. He then explains that it's not a date but rather an errand because he's going to need her help in carrying groceries back home. They gaslight themselves into believing it's definitely not a date, and Akane agrees to go with him. After school, she runs into Himari, who suggests they walk home together and even hit Parfait Parlor on the way. She reveals they're serving her favorite dish today, and he can offers to pay for the food. But Akane has to turn her down because she's craving some sloppy toppy today. Himari assumes she's going on a date with someone and takes a wild guess that her partner might be Saito. But when she says it's not a date, Himari suggests the three of them hang out together. Unsure of what to do, Akane decides to run away but steps into Shisei, who had purposely placed herself in her so she would stop. She cryptically asks if she plans on getting Saito's ding-dong, but Akane turns into a nervous wreck and continues to run off. She then waits for Saito at their rendezvous and continues to gaslight herself into thinking this is not a date but rather an errand, and they walk to the nearest convenience store. Inside, they decide to get some eggs, but when Saito randomly picks up a pack, Akane says this other pack costs less than the one he picked and that he should always find a balance between price and quality. Later, they stumble upon a chicken sale, and Akane dives headfirst into the swarm of housewives only to get thrown out. Saito rushes in after her to show he's the alpha of the house but gets the same treatment, making them realize they're both equally pathetic and miserable. The sale ends as they lie on the floor, and despite not getting any chicken, they realize spending time with each other is not bad after all. As they walk home, Saito praises her shopping ability, which will make her a good housewife, but then realizes she's already married to him. At night, Akane wakes up and finds Saito awfully close to her, which sends her into a panic. Saito explains she hugged her from behind when she was asleep, but Akane is sure she is repulsed by how ugly he is even in her sleep. She then asks what he was trying to do, and Saito admits he was trying to poke her cheek because she looks cute when she's asleep. Instead of getting angry, Akane feels flattered and says he is allowed to look at her when she's sleeping. The next day, they both wake up with their brains on hiatus, and while Akane burns her bread, Saito walks around the house wearing nothing but a tie. Later, they visit an ice cream store where they share a large piece of strawberry-filled loaf. Just then, Himari shows up out of nowhere and is amused to see them hanging out outside of school. However, Akane says Saito has been stalking her all day and even ate a piece of bread she threw in the garbage. Later that night, Akane stays up to study for a quiz and learns Saito never studies for exams because he memorizes everything said in class. Akane believes he's calling her stupid for trying so hard and kicks him out of the room. Despite that, he brings her a handmade strawberry sandwich, which turns out to be so tasty that it gives her the energy to stay up all night studying. However, the next day in school, Akane collapses from exhaustion, and when Himari suggests she focus on her health more, Akane sternly says she will get the top grade in class no matter the cost. That night, Saito brings her another strawberry sandwich, but realizes she's already dozed off on the desk. When he approaches her, he sees that Akane is sweating like a pig and even has a high fever. He quickly puts her in bed and wipes her face and arms with a wet towel. But Akane's mind is still hell-bent on studying for the test. Being fever-high, she finally reveals the reason she studies so hard is so she can become a doctor one day and make a cash cow from overcharged medicines.
It's an evil world we live in.
She also reveals her parents don't have the means to put her through medical school, and her grandma promised to fund her education if she married Saito. She believes Saito must feel so good about himself because he can get the top grades even without studying, and even admits she's always admired him. However, she quickly realizes what she said and starts throwing a tantrum. Later that night, her fever skyrockets to 42 degrees Celsius, but Akane doesn't want to call an ambulance because she thinks someone else who needs it more will die. Saito refuses to watch her suffer because of her own stupidity, so he carries her in his own arms and carries her to the nearest hospital. On the way, Akane admires his strength and assumes he'll make fun of her now that he knows what her dream is. However, Saito says he believes in her and that she can be anything she wants in this world on top of being the most insufferable woman alive. Despite being out of each other's throats, the lovebirds finally start to think that they might get a happy ending after all. A few days later, Akane wakes Saito up, and the two immediately start bantering in a playful manner. Saito then reminds her that she admires him and reveals he even has a recording of her admitting it, causing her to run after him to snatch his phone. At school, Imara congratulates Saito for getting a perfect score on the quiz and even starts flirting with him a little. After she leaves, Akane angrily walks towards Saito, but then gently asks him not to get too friendly with other girls because he already has a wife. As she walks away, Saito admits to herself that Akane can be very cute when she's not out to get him. That's it for this video. Leave a like and comment which anime you want us to cover next. If you want more recaps like this, watch this video here.